Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Web3 Compass. In this episode, I talk with Jong about his job as a venture manager at Blockchain Founders Group, a Germany-based crypto incubator and venture capital investor. Furthermore, Jong is the program manager of Web3 Talents, which offers free DLT, DeFi, NFT and Bitcoin mentoring programs. Last but not least, we are of course talking about current and future trends in Web3. Enjoy the episode. He is well known in the German crypto scene. He has designed the DeFi Talents program, works now as a venture manager for the Blockchain Founders Group and as a program manager for Web3 Talents, which is why I'm very happy to welcome on this week's podcast episode, Jong-Chan.
Thanks for having me, Sebastian. It's a pleasure to be here at Web3 Compass.
Are you ready to jump right into the interview?
Yes, let's start. It's 8 a.m. in South Korea. It's a bit early. I just woke up, to be honest, but I'm ready to go.
Perfect. So people have to know you're in South Korea, right?
Yes, I just moved here in April last year, and I'm very happy to be here just to broaden my horizon, just to get in other Web3 communities. And it's an exciting space.
Very nice. So midnight, my time, very early in the morning, your time. But we made it. And I think it's always great to start with a quick introduction. So who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so my name is Jong-Chan, but feel free to call me JC or Chong. I have many names. I know my name is hard to pronounce. So basically, I was born and raised in Germany, but then I moved to South Korea, as I said, in April last year. And I'm a venture manager for the Blockchain Founders Group. We are a venture capital firm, and we do two things. So we are a VC investor. So we set up a new micro fund, and they are investing, I think, from up to 200K to 500K. But what I do mainly is I am a venture manager at the company building department. So we are setting up Web3 startups from scratch, and we are running an incubation program called BSG Superstars, and we offer this 2 times per year, 3 months of Web3 incubation. We're offering funding, network, and also workshops and mentorship to entrepreneurs from all around the world. Yeah, and that's what we do. And besides that, I'm also managing Web3 Talents. It's a new branding under which the 4 free mentoring programs, DeFi Talents, DLT Talents, NFT Talents, and the newly launched Bitcoin Talents are running. And the operations is done mainly by the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center, which is a think tank all around DLT, blockchain, crypto within the Frankfurt School.
It's really inspirational, and I have some questions already prepared for these topics. But before I go deeper into the Web3 part, I would like to ask you some questions about your background, because you have a bachelor's degree in political science and public law, as well as a master's degree in public policy. And I wanted to ask you what motivated you to choose these studies.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for the question. I think that my academic background might be a bit unusual to be now in the Web3 space 24/7, 365 days a year. But basically, when I did my Abitur, it's the high school diploma in Germany, I was really unsure what to study. And to be completely honest, I didn't know what to study for my university degrees. So my dad, he's very closely befriended with a political science teacher at the Heidelberg University in the political science department, and she said I should try maybe doing political science because not many people have focus on this. And given that I am of Korean origin, she said, you could try to become a German diplomat working for the Auswärtige Amt for the German Foreign Ministry. So I just did that. I got into the topic. I studied comparative politics, election mechanisms, but also international relations. And I did that for 3 years. I did a small exchange year within the Erasmus program in Bordeaux at the Sciences Po. And I really liked it. And I also got good grades. And after I graduated from my bachelor's, I was like, maybe I should continue this path. And then I chose public policy. And then for this, I chose it's not well known. It's a private university in Berlin, the Hertie School of Governance. But it's a very well known school with, I guess, some good partnerships with Columbia University, with National University of Singapore, but also the University of Tokyo. And because I like reading Japanese anime, manga, and watching anime, I chose to do a double degrees in partnership with the University of Tokyo in Japan. And this is also where I stayed 1 year. Yeah, and then in 2020, I just graduated and have been looking for, of course, new job opportunities. I did apply to some big consultancies, but I was lucky enough to be acquainted with my friend Max Zhang, who's actually the head of BSG Superstars, the Web3 incubator I mentioned earlier. And he just told me, there are open positions at the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. Why not apply? And then I did submit a application to Philip Sandner, who's the professor at the Frankfurt School. And then, I just got accepted, got into the think tank, into a blockchain center. And then a few weeks after, I also joined the Blockchain Founders Group.
Very interesting. And at this part of your career or during your studies, have you thought maybe about becoming a politician?
Not really. I guess I did an internship at the German Federal Ministry, Foreign Ministry, and I think the people there are really, really smart. It's just that public processes and decision making processes are quite long. And I feel like currently at this stage in my life, where I'm still young, I want to learn as much as I can and have a lasting impact to whatever community is out there. And I feel like in Web3, the communities are so vibrant, so buzzing, it's innovation driven, and people are just really very, how do you say, they're really approachable, right? So even though there's a big age gap, even though there's a big gap in terms of experiences, you can just write them on LinkedIn, like you did actually, and or we can meet at meetups or in online communities, and you can just talk to them, right? And this is what really made me interested, becoming fully engaged with Web3.
Yeah, that's true. I think also politics, you also have to be quite pragmatic, because I have been involved when I was like 16 years old in like local politics.
Well,
And
interesting.
it's like a long game. Of course, even in your own party, you of course have different interests. And I think when you're younger, you need the patience, or you need to have like a long breath for all these topics, and it's hard to play this game. I think after some years, and maybe if I gain more maturity, I'm still quite interested, but let's see what the future holds. Maybe also talking about politics, I also saw that after your master's degree, you were like a research assistant also at the University of Tokyo,
Yes.
and you specialized in Japanese monetary policy, right?
Yeah, I did. I actually did my master's thesis on Japanese monetary policy, in specific ETF asset purchases by the Japanese central bank. And I found out that there is a statistical correlation between those asset purchases and increases in the Japanese stock markets. So I think Japanese monetary policy is very, very interesting because they were some of the key innovators in the monetary policy space, and I think they also introduced the yield curve control, and they have had also one of the lowest interest rate environments in the world for a very long time.
Yeah, I think the general situation in Japan is quite unique, right? Because of their high debt and also their monetary policy, and also how much of the debt is owned, for example, by the Japanese people. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the whole situation? Was it maybe also a reason why you got more involved into crypto?
I think these two topics, me being involved in crypto and my interest with Japanese monetary policy, were not really associated, I guess. But indeed, Japanese monetary policy is very interesting, and also the broader macroeconomic yeah, situation in Japan. And prior to the points which you have mentioned, right, low inflation, some crazy monetary policies. There's also a declining birth rate, right? I think Japan has a birth rate of below one. It's one of the top three lowest birth rate countries in the world. And yeah, it was just very interesting to talk to some professors at the University of Tokyo who actually are central bankers. I had three professors who just came from the BOJ, Bank of Japan, and we also had adjunct professors from the Federal Reserve from the US. So there was just a very big expertise out there in terms of central banking at the university.
Very interesting. And when we already talk about money, what was your first touch point with cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, I guess I came rather late to the game. I think in 2018 or 17 at the ICO hype, I guess some of my friends talked to me about Bitcoin, Ethereum, how friends of their friends made some money. I guess one of them, he said, "Oh, I know someone who's doing Bitcoin or Bitcoin mining, and then he's made 5,000 k euros overnight, basically, and now he opened up a new hookah bar in Frankfurt." And I was like, this sounds like a scam, can't be true, right? But then still, I bought a Ledger Nano X. I actually got the Moon edition. It's a limited edition, and then I bought some satoshis, right, and I put it on my ledger, but it was really hard. I thought it was so complicated, and I was a bit scared actually to do this for the first time. But then I got it on my ledger, and then it was just staying there, and then didn't do anything with this for I think 1 or 2 years. And then, but I loosely followed the crypto scene, but I was like, just interested in a passive way, I guess. And then, because my friend Max, he told me about the research assistant job at the Frankfurt School, I just applied there, and then I got into this topic again.
And talking about your job at the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center, can you tell me more about your research? So what did it include?
Yeah. So we do many research pieces, articles, or research projects with state authorities, or also with private partners in the private sector. So especially with financial institutions. So I guess two of my biggest research focuses, were together with the German Ministry for Environment, the Bundesumweltamt. We did a study on how to bring DLT technology to be applied for the EU energy emissions trading system, so the EU ETS. And the idea is to basically have either Ethereum privatized, so not privatized, but Ethereum private. So you can basically fork the Ethereum protocol and make it used for a private consortia, or you can also try to fork the Cosmos ecosystem, or yeah, right, and then bring, for instance, the EU emission certificates as NFTs onto the blockchain. So this was the core focus of these studies, right? So utilizing DLT or blockchain technology as a way, as an infrastructure for the EU ETS to work upon. And the good thing about this is that you have, especially if you use the Cosmos as a base protocol, that you have native interoperability implied already. So not only the EU ETS players, so the German national authorities for emissions, can be deployed as actors, as issuers of certificates onto the platform, but also non-EU players like I don't know, the US, Switzerland, Japan, Korea, China, and so on. So this was quite an interesting study. Yeah,
And what and why would you like to fork, for example, in this your study the blockchain, or is there a specific reason? Is it to sandbox it, or why cannot you use like the public blockchain?
yeah, very good question. I think at that time it was just it was pre-merge, right? It was the merge didn't happen. We didn't have any conviction about the date of when the merge would happen, when the scalability would come to Ethereum, and also I think the rollups were also not that strongly present in our minds because this was also new technology. The studies has been done I think 1 year ago. But I think currently, when we see the innovation in terms of rollups, side chains, and post merge, right? I guess if we would reevaluate the recommendations for the study, maybe we could come to a different conclusion. Maybe there is a way to use the public chain as well, right? But because we are talking about state players, regulators, and who want to have a really secured environment and with players that they can trust from the beginning, I think the private setup, the consortium blockchain setup did make sense, at least at that point in time.
Hmm. Yeah, understandable. And you also played a key part for the crypto assets conference, right?
Yeah, I was part of the organizing team. The Crypto Assets Conference has been traditionally be organized once per year, but last year in 2022 we did it twice for the first time twice per year. One time in April and one time in I think somewhere around September October, and it's one of the key crypto conferences in Europe. We have over 5,000 viewers every year from all around the world. And it's also a key platform and networking platform for especially financial institutions in the German speaking areas. So we had Deutsche Bank, Börse Stuttgart coming, also some speakers from the European Central Bank. So it's really a high level, and it's always organized by Professor Philipp Sandner.
I was at the second conference as a journalist.
No, correct.
I think it was very interesting because a lot of people from traditional finance were there. And I thought you see the adoption of digital assets or distributed ledger technology at the big banks. And also, I'm very interested in, for example, JP Morgan Onyx. And their system currently, I think, with Ripple, things are also cooking. So I think the CEO of Ripple tweeted at the beginning of this year that he expects a result of the law case, right? So very interested in what will happen next because I mean Swift, the system, I think it was created in 1970.
Yeah, it didn't change for decades. Yeah.
Yeah. And even though they moved to IP addresses, it's just very inefficient. You need probably 2 days for international bank transfer. And I think there is not really a reason why you don't have like real-time transactions nowadays.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Actually, if I may touch upon that, we at Blockchain Founders Group, we are running this Web3 incubation program, right? And one of the startups that we have incubated called Mcash, they are exactly tackling this problem, especially for the African markets. So, there are many SMEs in Africa, and they are all buying goods from Chinese merchants, right, or Indian merchants or Southeast Asian merchants. But the payment transaction process is really long and very expensive because all the settlement is done over the North American route. It takes many days, therefore, and you have many middlemen, and sometimes 24% of the transaction volume is actually paid out to the intermediaries, and they want to solve this with a stablecoin based payments infrastructure. It's a really cool project, and
Yeah, 24% is
crazy.
crazy
Yeah.
when you think about the margin and also about all these intermediaries in between. I also maybe relevant for later. At the beginning of this week, I had Oliver Shantin
Oh, very
in my
cool.
podcast.
Yeah.
So also very interesting with base note, and we also talked about the high margins or the high percentage a lot of these payment providers are taking. And I think it's also very interesting to just do these transactions with stable coins. And maybe we also touched the DeFi Talents program, and that you are now the program manager of like Web3 Talents. And for those who do not know what this is exactly, can you maybe explain it? What is like Web3 Talents?
Yeah, I think it's easier to just grab either DLT talents or DeFi talents and go from there. So all these free education and mentoring programs uh, come from actually the DLT talents program managed currently by Daniel Holt. He's my colleague, a very nice guy, by the way. And DLT Talents was, I think, initiated in the beginning by Philipp Sandner, Daniel Holk, um, and some other people. So Yip and Denise Duve and others, and Michael Spitz. And it's a 18 weeks mentoring program for women to get a head start as a leader in the DLT space, because we have seen that in the tech scene and especially in blockchain industry, I think there's a huge gender gap. So all the people you see or who are visible and who do stuff, they have been traditionally been men, right? Not females. So we kind of want to change it because we believe that forced diversity drives innovation, and that's why we established DLT Talents, 18 weeks, 10 sessions, and each session is 90 minutes, right? And we do a thorough selection process. So not everyone who applies, so there is an application process actually, and not everyone who applies can get actually into the program. And in the beginning, we had around 100 spots. Now we scaled to 200 spots, but we get over, I think, 600 to 700 applications per cohort. So I think we did a good job marketing it. And in these kind of talents programs, in these workshops, what we do is we do a short recap about what has happened in the DLT space in the last 2 weeks. Then we go into Zoom breakout rooms with small groups with a mentor. And in these breakout sessions, we talk about the assignments that we have given 2 weeks ago. So we just talk, we open the floor for questions, we discuss, we share our learnings, we share maybe some URLs that we have found especially helpful in our learning journey. And then we get together, we get back together into the main Zoom session where we do kind of like a synthesis, right? We show some best practice answers from the cohort. And then the last 30 minutes are always reserved for external expert guest speakers, right? So looking at DeFi Talents, just last week we had Andri, he's the COO of 1inch Speak. We had people from big companies. We had people from Algorand, our sponsors. Next week we are gonna having speaker Alexander Wüst from Binance. He will touch upon topics such as regulation in the DeFi space. So it's a wide variety of really interesting guest speakers that we're inviting. And I think the quality gets also always better because people know that we are doing actually some impactful stuff in terms of education for people from all sorts of backgrounds, because we have people who are doing community management for Web3 projects. We have regulators in the space. So we have people from BaFin coming. We have lawyers. We have consultants from the big fours or investment bankers who are interested in becoming participants. So I guess we are bringing together lots of different stakeholders in the Web3 space. And coming back to your question, I'm sorry it took a bit. So we started with DLT Talents, then we moved to DeFi Talents, of which I became the program manager for a while. And then last year we started NFT Talents. And actually next week we're going to start Bitcoin Talents, right? with a big focus, I guess, on Lightning Network, because this is where all the major innovation is happening currently in the Bitcoin space. You can't do much on the peer-to-peer payments base layer protocol on Bitcoin. Yeah, and then we saw that maybe in terms of rebranding, it makes sense to ride the Web3 wave and just summarize all these different programs within the Web3 DACH, how do you say, label.
Yeah, under the roof. Yeah, yeah, under the label. That's great. I'm also part of the DeFi Talents program, and I
Yeah, I
did
saw that. I
this
saw
week's
that.
this week's assignment. I tried out Chat GPT the first time to
Yeah.
answer the questions and then to double check it. Of course, because the model, right, it's trained for data from 2021, but it's so incredible. So I'm amazed how accurate it is,
Yeah,
even though crazy.
it's really crazy. It's really eye opening. I tried it. I tried it a few times, and the output is really good. And the output is better the better you ask questions, right? It's the same as in our programs. But currently, I think ChatGPT is at capacity. I tried to use it yesterday, but it's over flooded, I guess, with inquiries.
Yeah, it sometimes really has problems. Also, very interested in how these things are going. I also saw on LinkedIn that Microsoft made like an offer for I think 10 billion,
Right.
and also for 49%, and also taking a part of their profits. Not, I have not validated this. I just saw
No,
the
it's true.
LinkedIn
I
post.
read that
So
too. I read that too, and they want to integrate it to, I think, their Bing search engine. I guess it doesn't hurt to have some competitors for Google.
yeah, very interesting how this goes, and also for affiliate marketing or content creation. I tested a tool which is called Jasper.ai, and you give like 3 keywords or 5 keywords, and it writes you a whole article, and it's very good. So you could, for example, use your own knowledge, enrich this article, and then just pump out content like crazy. And I think everybody can do it, right?
Yeah, I
So
guess everyone
let's
should
see
do
how
it.
this goes.
Everyone should do it, I guess. But I'm a bit worried maybe about the content creators which you have now, and this is a very big stakeholder group in the Web3 space, right? So I hope that there is a way to keep their jobs there and or find ways that they can pivot their careers, right? But maybe it's just also just a fruitful combination between ChatGPT and, as you said, enhancing your own writings.
Yeah, if everybody creates the same content, it would also be lame. But at the other hand, I think oftentimes people also currently create a lot of the same content.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't want the whole web to be spammed with like one source of truth or one kind of article. Let's see how this plays out. And also talking about the stuff and talking about new innovations, I finally want to ask you some questions about your work at the Blockchain Founders Group. You already told me a few stories, but could you maybe again tell me more about your journey there, and maybe how your day-to-day life looks like?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I started working there in 2021, I think in April or May it was. And first I joined as an entrepreneur in residence. So I joined a startup project, a venture project called Sharp Explorer.
Mhm.
But now they've become Kasuria, right? So Kasuria is now a DeFi analytics platform who wanna decomplex DeFi. And the reason why is DeFi is offering many sources of, I guess, revenue streams or income streams or yield streams, because there's different strategies how you can make more money in a sense. So one is just simple hodling in hopes that asset prices will rise. I think currently in 2023 that will not be the case. I think 2023 will be a sideways market, a time for builders. But except for besides hodling, you can do staking. You can put your money in certain vaults and get some yields, right? And you can become a LP, so liquidity provider in an liquidity pool, maybe on Uniswap. You can try to get some airdrops. You can participate in some incentivization programs, and if you get some tokens in return, these you can take again and put them in an AMM, maybe on Curve or somewhere, and you get some yields, and you can take the yield and restake them, and so on and so on. Now you have also a liquid staking. You can stake Ethereum, right? So there are different sources of money flows, and you can recombine them. Money Legos, I think, is a keyword here, and then investment strategies can become very, very complex, multi-layered, with multiple layers of risk management, right? So they are trying to make this more accessible for retail users, but also for institutional users, and decomplexify these different strategies in the DeFi space. And yeah, so I was there. I was there as an entrepreneur in residence. I helped there with the initial structuring and conceptualization of the DeFi space. And then I did that, and then Castoria was founded, and then I continued then as the venture manager, because we were thinking, we had Base Node, we had Castoria, we had some other projects, and we thought like, our company building process is really, really solid. Maybe you should formalize this within a Web3 incubation program. And we did that with the first cohort of PhD superstars, out of which we have originated 6 startups so far. And then we did the second cohort, which just finished in December last year, with investing in 4 new startups in the fields of privacy tech, stablecoin, payment systems, passive investments into digital asset indexes, but also a ESG token database.
It's very interesting. And talking about this process which you developed, or this program, how can I imagine it?
Yeah. So we get around, I think, 300 to 400 applications per cohort. And then we do a pre-selection based on interviews, screening the applications, first evaluating the team and ideas. And then out of those hundreds of applications, we do a pre-selection for about 50 people, right? Then they are admitted to the program. And then we do 2 weeks of intense assignment workshops, where we do another final assessment on who gets into the so-called crunch mode. And this is where the tough part, I guess, for the future founders start, because then we will introduce them to our mentorship program. We will organize workshops with external guest speakers who do really well-designed workshops on maybe Web3 community building, getting grants from, I don't know, Gitcoin, or which blockchain protocol should you use, right? So really Web3 tailored workshops, but also traditional workshops, which are more general, like how do you set up a legal entity? What do you need to pay attention to? What are the different methods of doing fundraise, capital increase, convertibles, safes, SAFs, right? So these are all things that we can help with. And of course, we also introduce them to our very broad network of potential investors, advisors, ecosystem players, and so on. And then after 2 to 3 months of really hard incubation, where they refine their pitch deck, where they do a lot of customer validation by talking to potential customers, maybe working on some MVP or some Figma screens, they will then go in front of the investment committee of BFG, and then they will do a pitch, 15 to 20 minutes usually, and then there's some Q&A. And after the final pre-seed pitch day, they will get a notification from the team whether we have conviction to fund them or not. And then if the conviction and if the decision is positive, they get an initial pre-seed funding of 60K. It's not that much actually, but it's enough for usually a runway of 3 to 4 5 months, depending on the monthly burn rate. And during this time, they can continue working on their MVP or prototype or proof of concept. And we will also in parallel do some warm introductions to our network. Yeah, and we are really pushing the startups for visibility, for personal branding as well, that they onboard a good developer team as well, also a good CTO. And then, we hope that they are successful and we are going the journey together from ideation to really, seed stage, pre-series A, series A, and so on together. So we are there for the longer term.
That sounds really interesting. And you talked about this initial investment. It's around for 6 to 10% of equity, right? The 60K.
Yeah, for 5 to 10% usually. It really depends on what the startup team is pitching, at what valuation, what they have to show in terms of traction. Of course, if they have already a prototype in place, if they have already maybe some revenue, then of course the valuation will be naturally higher.
Sure. And maybe a dumb question, but if you're part in the program, is there also like some kind of sponsorship? So if you're doing this program for 3 months, you would be working right now, for example, 9 to 5. Do you get like some sort of compensation, or is this more or less like a personal risk
Yeah.
you would take to maybe complete the program?
Yeah, got it. I think it's an excellent question. It's a smart question. My professor always said there are no dumb questions. There are only dumb people who don't ask questions. So I like that. And in terms of compensation, there is actually a $2,000 or euros compensation flat per month during the time of conversation, right? So because we know people might have other commitments, they have a family, maybe they need to pay rent, and they also want to maybe pay for, I don't know, an AWS account. By the way, we have, I think, 25K in AWS credits for every startup because of a cooperation with Amazon. But of course, they maybe want to use a Figma account. They want to run other developer tools, right? So there are costs and opportunity costs involved definitely in participating in incubators or accelerators, right? So that's why we've decided to fund each member of a startup team with $2,000 or euros per month. So in case you are a team of one CEO type and one CTO, then each of you would get $2,000 per month.
That's amazing. I think it's also quite important because if you would have someone maybe also from another country with not too high financial resources or backing, it would be a great risk, of course, to be participating in the program. So I think this is really great. And what I was also wondering is, do you take pitch decks where people have their own business idea, or do you also have like examples? Because when I talked to Oliver, I think in the early days, there were also like business ideas from the blockchain founders group where people could take these business cases and maybe work on them, right?
Yeah, another excellent question. So you can apply to the BFG Superstars program with or without a team. So you can apply solo or with a team, but you can also apply with or without an idea. So usually people, they don't have a very specific idea in mind. They have a general direction though, right? So maybe the candidate has had some experiences flipping NFTs and he's done this for several years. He's made some money. So of course, then the biggest founder market fit would be the applicant, the candidate, to do something in the direction of NFTs, right? So there is a general direction usually, but it's totally fine if you don't have any idea yet, because in the first few weeks of BFG Superstars, we will hold ideation workshops, and we also have a treasury box of full of Web3 ideas, which might become interesting in the next 6 to 6 to 12 months, right? Because we at Blockchain Founders Group, we believe that Web3 space, it's so fast. So actually, if you are working on a project now, which is on trend now, you're already too late, 6 months or 1 year. So you need to try to think in a way that, or foresee the future trends and uh, have start now just to be prior to the trend and have a ready to deploy product or service right at the time when the trend becomes a hype.
Yeah, totally understandable. What big trends do you see in the future?
I guess many different trends. I think tokenization topic of so real world asset tokenization is becoming again very interesting. I think it has been around for many years actually, right? But we haven't seen any projects going out from the proof of concept phase. But currently on crypto Twitter, but also in Discord groups, I'm seeing that reward tokenization or bringing reward assets on chain has become really interesting and big topic right now. Also looking at MakerDAO, I think they are one of the pioneers here in this space. I think they now allow reward assets as collateral to take out, I think, DAI stablecoin. I think maybe in terms of DeFi, I think the major it's not a trend. It's a major bottleneck, but it's a bottleneck and topic where major brain power is flowing into currently. It's liquidity, right? Because liquidity is really split across different chains, split across different apps currently, and this makes the user experience really bad. For instance, take the liquidity provider on a liquidity pool and on Uniswap. It's maybe it's USDC with a very small token. So if liquidity providers provide tokens, assets to this liquidity pool, they don't get a lot of revenue, right? Because their revenue is basically is transaction fee from traders. So and if traders don't trade on it, uh, then they don't get a lot of revenues, right? And again, for the other side, for the traders, it's also not a good trading experience because the lower the liquidity pool, the higher the price impact, the higher the slippage, right? So liquidity is the bottleneck in DeFi currently. And maybe an analogy would be imagining the internet with very low bandwidth. It's just not really fun to work with, right? So liquidity is the bottleneck. And yeah, but currently we are also seeing some innovation in this regard. It could be cross-chain bridges, right? It could be liquid staking. So yeah, I'm really hyped what's coming next in DeFi in terms of liquidity improvements.
Understandable. I also think the tokenization of private equity might be very interesting. I have a friend of mine, I would say, called Niall. He was also on this podcast before. He also told me some very interesting things also about regulation in this area and maybe changes in Switzerland. Also, you talked about tokenization of assets. I think looking, for example, at Timeless. So I use them where you can buy like fractional shares of, for example, watches or sneakers or art. And I also think this is quite interesting, and especially because these things become tradable. But of course, there are also big things missing, right? So because they have like their trading platform on their own app. But in an ideal case, you would probably have several such apps, and then you could trade, for example, several shares of sneaker in probably another application, something like a exchange or something for maybe these assets.
Yeah, exactly. I think the key topic you are touching upon here is interoperability, right? And exchangeability of different assets who are maybe deployed on different dApps or different chains even, right? I think we will get there somewhere, sometime in the future, but currently I think we see I think two approaches in interoperability. One is becoming just an EVM compatible blockchain or app chain, and then there's also cross-chain interoperability. And or there is also the approach that the Cosmos ecosystem is looking into, which is basically the layer zero approach with a hub and different app chains. And if you have different app chains that are connected to a hub, then you have basically natively implemented interoperability. But maybe one quick point about timeless, right? I think that's very interesting that you mentioned them. Maybe you need to cut it out because I'm not 100% sure if I've seen it correctly, but I think the assets that have been sort of quote unquote tokenized by Timeless, they got robbed. I think a few weeks ago. Maybe you need to research it, and if it's not true, you need to cut this part off. But I think actually some thieves they have stolen some goods from Timeless. So and this points to the question of uh, custody of real world assets and linking real world assets to the blockchain, right? Because if you are an owner of an NFT that represents the a real world asset that has been brought onto the blockchain via an NFT, but the real world asset which the NFT points to gets robbed, then what is the NFT worth? Probably nothing.
Just a quick note from the future. Yong was right. Timeless had watches in a treasury which have been stolen. And there was even another Germany-based or Berlin-based startup called Watchmaster. And they also had watches stolen and they had to file for bankruptcy. And what's critical for an investor, for example, also in these watches is that at least at Timeless, I know that Timeless had these watches insured, but only at the initial investment. So let's say you have a watch and the watch increases in value over time, like the value increase is not covered in the insurance. And I think the whole situation is quite interesting, but also quite critical because, as Jong said, if you have them as a token, but they are being stolen, yeah, what are you doing?
The key matter here is really custody. Can you trust the custodian? Is the real world asset held in a private and secure environment? So the linkage between real world asset and NFT becomes really, really crucial.
That's true. And I also, at the crypto assets conference, there was a very interesting case where I think there was a woman speaking about certificates which prove that you have basically the assets. How do you say it? Like a proof of you own it. It's a proof that you own the asset. And then when, for example, your watch gets stolen, you had this NFT, right? And then the NFT with a smart contract or something like that, um, you could mark your watch, for example, as stolen. And I thought this might be an amazing idea because if I imagine you have like the watch market, and for example, everybody who wants to buy a Rolex gets in the future also an NFT on the blockchain. And if you want to buy it secondary, you can check the NFT of the watch. For example, I don't know, maybe they have like a serial number in the inside or whatever, and then you can check the NFT. And if the watch gets stolen and you want to buy it, for example, on the secondary market, and you also want to check the NFT, but the owner of the watch, for example, marks or flags the NFT that the watch is stolen, then you wouldn't buy it. And then there would be only like a market for these stolen watches under thieves. So maybe a thief would sell it to another thief or to another criminal. Yeah, this might be definitely possible, but you could keep all these stolen goods away from legitimate people. And I thought this was quite an interesting use case.
Yeah, I mean, NFT authentication will become really, really important, I guess, because currently I think the smart contract is pointing towards NFT, or the smart contract is pointing towards real world assets. But it would be really interesting to think about the other way around, like the NFT pointing towards one single smart contract, or the real world asset pointing to a smart contract as well. And you could do this maybe through some kind of, as you said, a serial number or some QR codes, which point to the correct smart contract, and then the correct smart contract would then point again to the correct NFT, just to have the connection to what is the original NFT or real world asset.
Very interesting. Have you read the book The Network State?
No, I haven't read it.
So I thought one thing which was also very interesting from the book is that the author Balaji said that the blockchain could also use to, for example, save the history of a state, and um, it would be like a single source of truth. Because if you look, for example, in other countries, there are definitely examples that history has been rewritten or has been falsified. And I thought it might be also interesting. But right now, you have the Wayback Machine in the internet, right? So you can go there and type in any website and can go like 12 years back, and you see the website, how it was in the past. And then you can also look up for stuff which might have been deleted. But what I think might be very interesting to put like our knowledge as of now, for example, school books or general knowledge on the blockchain, so we can just prove it. So what's our perception of reality or how we have this knowledge? And in the future, people can have the single source of truth, or they at least know how we saw the reality in 2023.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I guess, yeah, I think being the single source of truth, being a transparent machine with historic data available is one of the core functions of blockchains, actually. And yeah, I guess this is a really useful, function of blockchains. Yeah, definitely.
And the final question is, where do you see crypto in like 5 years in 2028?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think I will probably skip the pricing prediction question because this always gets wrong. But I think that especially the OG cryptos like Bitcoin, Ethereum, they will be much higher than today, especially in light of the Bitcoin halving in 2024. And with also more conviction that post-merge Ethereum will continue on a scalability roadmap. And I think also here, I think Q1 2023, so really in a few months, there will be the Shanghai update, which will allow now to for Ethereum stakers to withdraw the Ethereum stakes. I think this will also lead to more conviction, less risk for stakers for the Ethereum ecosystem. So this will probably also be a positive signal for the prices. But in terms of what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years, it's really unpredictable, I guess. I hope that we will see that the reward assets will be tapped into and brought to the blockchain, maybe as collateral or some kind of maybe fractionalization business models. I mean, these are not new ideas, right? But they haven't been implemented yet. They have been touted to be the next big thing. But as I said, no big projects have been able to make this really scalable or bring a lot of attention to it. But I think adoption in the Web3 space, it's also a lot about education and training, taking away the fear, uncertainty, and doubt from people. And I think in 5 years, lots can happen in terms of education, taking away the fear, and also a lot of things can happen in terms of innovation, right? Again, solving the liquidity problem in DeFi, making things more decentral, more secure, less hacks, less exploits on cross-chain bridges or on dApps, more secure Oracle ecosystems and infrastructures, aligning more the regulatory view with retail user views, right? So regulation will also play, I guess, a big part in it. And I think two things will happen in parallel. So one thing is that regulators will be more inclined of accepting crypto as not necessarily as a means of payment, but maybe as a category, right? So it could be also, I think just recently the BIS, the Bank of International Settlement, they just announced that they, I think, recommend or will allow for a digital asset allocation of up to 2% for banks or financial institutions. I think this is really big news. So because they are not saying we are going to prohibit this, we don't like this, but they are accepting an asset allocation of 2% in digital assets, right? So there is, I think, a convergence between regulation and private sector becoming also more aware of regulatory requirements, right? So now after the FTX scandal, all the major central exchanges, they are opening up the balance sheets. Not really, not 100%, but they are trying at least. And they are also thinking or discussing about now separating departments within their operations, right? Because currently liquidity provision or custodial things and also the trading functions are all merged within one big company, right? But this doesn't happen in the traditional world, right? So in traditional finance, the custodial functions, liquid provision, brokerage, they are all separate, right? But so I think that there is certainly some observations to be done in terms of convergence, right? So crypto companies, players becoming more aware about regulatory requirements, which are actually well grounded. There's a reason for why regulation is there in the first place, but also seeing that regulatory players become more educated about Web3 topics and seeing the potential of Web3 and decentralized infrastructures.
How do you see the role of soul-bound tokens in the next 5 years?
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think soul-bound tokens enable basically mapping of historic actions on the blockchain for digital identities, right? I think they enable the whole discussion about digital identities, reputation, right? So imagine probably maybe a project that does the Schufa, the German Schufa, basically on a blockchain basis. I think that's really, really interesting. And it's interesting because there are still so many people who do rug pulls, who do scams, who do exploits on a blockchain. And currently what they do is they just move funds. They use Tornado Cash. So Tornado Cash has been shut down by the ECC, but only on the front end, right? The smart contract is still alive and kicking on the EVM, right? It's still there. You can still use it if you have some technical knowledge, right? And you can just move funds from there. And yeah, there is a need for reputation, right? And reputation could be also coming in the form of a reputation scanner or analytics platform scanning your history of transactions done or activities done in the Web3 space. And this could be enabled by exactly those sort of tokens that you have mentioned.
Very interesting. Maybe in a year or something like that, you can come again to this podcast and we can take a first reflection on what happened so far.
Yeah.
Thank you that you were today on this episode. It was great. And I learned a lot about the Blockchain Founders Group, and I also gained some very nice insights. I think it's great what you are doing with Web3 Talents, with the whole program. I will definitely link it in the show notes, and I would be happy to see you here on the show in the future.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Sebastian, to be at Web3 Compass, and let's do this again maybe in a couple of months or next year, and just to come back and see where I have been right and where I've been wrong.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast episode. If you like it, you always know how to support my show. You can leave a positive recommendation. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a like. And yeah, I wish you a nice day and hopefully you listen to this podcast next week again. So cheers.